is loud. Good afternoon, fellow Rotarians and guests. It is truly a pleasure to welcome you to this August 17th meeting of the Rotary Club of West Jacksonville. Thanks for joining us. Zoomies, if you would please mute yourselves, as my husband says quite often. I'm going to ask Randy Thornton to lead us in the invocation and Chris Berge in the pledge.
Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, may the blessings of God rest upon you. May his peace abide with you. May his presence illuminate your heart now and forevermore. Amen.
Everybody, please face the flag and join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance to the greatest country on the earth. I pledge allegiance to the flag, of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great. Thank you both, Randy and Chris. Appreciate that. So it's always an exciting day, but it's great to be with you all today. It's a beautiful day, and I appreciate you all being here with us. To add to our excitement today, it's always a pleasure to be able to welcome a new member. So we're going to do that today. So I'm going to ask Tom Schneider and Jennifer Mack to join us at the podium, please. And I'm going to ask Tom to introduce us and tell us a little bit about Jennifer.
That is great. And did she get a rebuttal at all?
There's no rebuttal opportunity.
Okay, so it's just me introducing?
Yes, but you have to apply. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill?
Okay.
How about
okay,
that?
All right, that's fair enough. Okay, well, our newest member is Jennifer Mack. And Jennifer hails from about as far away from Jacksonville in the continental United States as you can be. She comes from Eugene, Oregon, where she lived almost all of her life till a year and 4 months ago, when she and her husband and family moved here from Oregon. And I was just asking her about the weather. She loves the hot weather. She loves the humidity. It's a real contrast to West Coast, that part of Oregon and that part of the Northwest. Anyway, I got acquainted with Jennifer through a fellow Rotarian, Kelly Shaw. Some of you may know Kelly. She's with the Downtown Club. And Kelly is with Highland Insurance. Jennifer is also, she is a client executive property and casualty with Highland. And Kelly and I have traded ideas for Rotary programs and guests and things like that. And so Kelly said, hey, we want to make sure we have more Highland people in Rotary clubs. Would you host Jennifer for lunch one day? And I did. And I'm really glad I did. She is a delightful person. I know many of you have met her already. And I hope you'll take the opportunity today and in the weeks to come to talk with her and get to know her. But I'm just thrilled she's joining our club. So we have a round of applause for Jennifer.
So Jennifer, it's a pleasure to welcome you to our club. We're so excited to have you. I've just given you your red badge of courage there, and we have a bag of goodies for you. And then I said there'd be no rebuttal, but we would like to invite you to say a few words to the club. So here's your bag, and here's your microphone.
Thank you both. I don't think I'm tall enough. Sorry. Well, like Tom mentioned, he's been so gracious to host me and sponsor me and help me find my new Rotary home here. So I appreciate that. I'm super thankful. I'm excited to get to know everyone. Like you mentioned, I hail from Oregon, moved here last year. Very, very happy move. My husband is from Jacksonville, so we are blessed with a large family, which is fantastic. I am a mom of 4 with 1 little guy still left at home. So you may hear me chatting about him from time to time. But again, just looking forward to get to knowing you all and being an active member. So thank you.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. Okay, we have a few pop-ups. I'm going to call on Larry Daly, who's running our camera there. Larry, can you do a pop-up? Here's your microphone.
No, I did put a sheet of paper on the table and was looking to do some and the best way for me to do it is get your
Here, just use this one.
I'm sorry. Okay. So I put a paper out on the table. I'm just looking for input on a couple of things that we're working on, try to, get your input because I really like to hear how you feel about it. If Larry, are you crazy or this looks, like a good idea? So if I could get, your input, comments, whatever you have to say, I'd really appreciate it. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Larry. And Tom Schneider has a pop-up for us, right, Tom?
You'll also notice on your tables, there is a sign-up sheet for the West Jacksonville Rotary Blood Drive, which is scheduled for September 14th. This very location, the Bloodmobile will be here in the parking lot between 11 and 2 or 2:30. So would love it if you'd sign up today. There'll be another opportunity next week as well, or the next couple of weeks, but the more we can figure out who's going when, the better. And I'm going to take just an opportunity. I need 1 to 2 people on the Bloodmobile committee for Rotary. And I'm willing to offer a signing bonus. If it's just 1, you get both of these. If it's 2, they're Starbucks cards. There's not a lot of money on there, but enough to get you a good cup of coffee. Anybody want to raise their hand now to join? It's a great committee. We have a lot of fun. It's just me right now, but okay. Mike O'Brien and yes. All right. Thank you. I'll pass these out to you. Thanks a lot.
Great, thank you, Tom. Okay, thank you, Tom. And just a reminder that the Vibrant Club seminar is this Saturday in Palatka. And we'll have a board meeting right after our regular meeting this afternoon. And with that, I'll call on Matt Hevner for the Family of Rotary report.
I won't take it this time. Move it a little bit to the side. All right, so let's start with birthdays. We had a few that were last week with Ed Lombard, Jim Schumacher, Krista Cadlish, and Kevin Hurd. They all and Alton Yates all have birthdays that either were last week or are happening between now and next week. And so we want to make sure that we wish all of them a happy birthday. I am sure that it is wonderful to all be 39. Let's see. The other thing that I do have is a little bit of sad news. We lost a gentleman who was a Rotarian here, and I lost the thing. Damon Liu, he passed away, and so there actually is a very nice obituary that if you're interested, you can email me and I'll forward to you. I had told you all that I recently had back surgery. Part of that was an incredible amount of weight that I gained. And I actually am sitting here. I've lost about 20 pounds of what I'd gained. So I'm proud of that. I know you're all sitting there saying, good Lord, how large did he get? But I can tell you now, I'm going to tell you this story and you are going to laugh and you're going to say he's lying. And I'm telling you, I swear on the Bible, I'm a religious person. I work for a Baptist college. I'm telling you, this actually happened. I have been trying to walk to lose weight. And so I'm sitting there and I'm walking down Crystal Springs Road. And this car drives by and takes out of their time. They roll down their window and yell out of the window, "It ain't working, fat boy." I waved, and as God is my witness, said, "I love you too, Dad."
Should we ask if it was a full hand wave? You'll get that later, I promise. I can't believe they did that to you. I'm proud of you for continuing on with your walk. You go, guy. I'm proud of you. Thank you for that report. Has anybody heard from Jimmy Kelly? Jimmy, you're on? Well, we've been thinking about you, Jimmy, and I hope you're feeling better. Great. I'm glad he's on. Great. Okay. Before he puts a bite of food in his mouth, Tim Johnson, are you going to give us a history moment? Okay. Tim Johnson, Treasurer Tim Johnson is going to give us a Rotary history moment.
Thank you, President Sean. I hope you all are familiar with this book, Paul Harris and the Birth of Rotary. We had the idea that we would share excerpts from the book with you for two very good reasons. And that's most people don't know who Paul Harris is. And secondly, most Rotarians don't know who Paul Harris is. So we want to take a few minutes during our meetings just to read an excerpt about Paul Harris and his life. And I'm going to read to you from chapter 18, which is titled The 5 Years of Folly. Just a couple of pages about Paul Harris. So as Paul Harris was studying in Iowa, Robert M. Johnson, his old college friend, moved from Chicago to San Francisco. Knowing this, Paul reasoned San Francisco seemed to be a good destination as a place to start his Western exploits. Before heading to the city by the bay, Paul detoured first to Yellowstone Park so he could admire the wonders of its natural phenomena and scenic beauty. Refreshed from his time in the mountains, the wanderer, as he was known, was now ready to push forward to the California coast. Now, this is San Francisco in late 1891, and it wasn't a city as sophisticated as Chicago at that time. It was really rough and ready days that occurred during its huge gold rush about 40 years later, or earlier, I should say. At least on the surface, it was not as boisterous as its Midwestern counterpart. Again, looks can be deceiving. So Robert Johnson, his friend, was now working for the San Francisco Examiner. This is the same paper that Senator George Hearst won in a poker game that was later given to his son, William Randolph Hearst. When Paul arrived there in late July looking for employment, things were slow in the coverage business. Most papers had a glut of capable newsmen from the East that were competing. Johnson, his friend, suggested that the Examiner's major competitor, the Chronicle, which was owned by Michael H. DeYoung, might be a potential place for Paul to start working. Now, these were two rival papers, along with Joseph Pulitzer's New York World, which pioneered the concept of yellow journalism. As a cub reporter, Paul had no salary, so his pay was determined based on what he got into print. Narratives deemed newsworthy for publication were paid by the column inch. If, however, he was given an assignment, he received a base stipend of $3. Typically, assignments normally went to more sophisticated correspondents. This meant in the days before police scanners, he had to be on the streets looking for news and developing sources of information. These talents required the ability to quickly befriend people and turn them into trusting witnesses, as Paul was known to do. Because of Paul's natural ingrained gift of putting people to ease, which he acquired in the years he spent at Wallingford and from his family, he fared better than most of the besieged news hounds. Still, Paul was facing rough times and fierce competition, which severely limited his prospects of making a decent living in the tabloid trade. Finally, during the evenings, he gathered with other newsmen at the Palace Hotel, one of the more prominent locations in San Francisco. It was there, among the palm-filled public court lounge, that he met and befriended Harry Pulliman. And these two guys spent many evenings together talking about newspapers, talking about leads, and eventually new quests and future plans. That's the life of Paul Harris in the late 1800s in San Francisco.
Thank you, Tim. I knew nothing about that part of his life. Thank you very much. Thanks for sharing that. Sergeant at Arms Carter Rosenblum. Carter's going to introduce our guest and visiting Rotarians. Thank you, Carter.
Thank you, President Sean. Thank you, Tim, for doing that today. You saved me a tremendous amount of time from reviewing that book and figuring out what to talk about. Before I start out, I'd just like to remind everybody how great of a club that we have here. The people that help put the show on every day, Larry Daly, Joe Springer, Patty, and Stu. Can we get a round of applause for them? I don't know why the blinds are down, but every week that we get to come here and beautiful day like today, look out on that river and see the American flag, it makes me proud to be a Rotarian up here. So we have a good day today. We have a lot of visitors. We have a great speaker today. So to get to that, we have a visiting Rotarian from the Riverside Club. David Martin is here. David, will you please stand up? Thank you for visiting today. And we have a couple guests in. Alberta Hips, she has a guest today. Give me a second to get over there.
I'm so pleased today to introduce you to Jack Meeks. He's a colleague, a friend, a local CPA, and he has decided to put himself for public service and run for city council next spring. So I'm just pleased he was able to be with us today.
Thank you for joining us today. And past President Ike Sherlock, already standing. Here you go.
Thank you, Carter. My guest today is Connor McKechnie. Connor's a analyst with Northwest Mutual, and it's his first Rotary meeting. So give him a real warm West Jax greeting, please.
And another past president, Mary Pat, has a guest today.
Thanks, Carter. Everybody, please welcome my guest, Stu Josberger. He and his wife, Kelly, own the Stumpy's Hatchet house. Thank you. On Main Street in Springfield. And I'd love for us to be able to go. It's an absolute blast. I can speak from experience, 10 fingers, 10 toes, and a bullseye.
That sounds like fun. And that concludes my Sergeant at Arms reports.
I'd like to think I'm funnier than that guy. I don't know. Well, good afternoon, fellow Rotarians. It is an honor and a privilege this afternoon to be able to introduce to you our speaker today, Michael Ray Fitzgerald, who is a freelance writer and media historian. He has written hundreds of articles for local, regional, national, and international publications. Michael is a former career musician. He has a bachelor's degree in journalism from Jacksonville University, a master's in mass communication from the University of Florida, where he also taught journalism, and a doctorate from the University of Reading in Berkshire, England. He also taught at the University of North Florida, Flagler College, and the College of Coastal Georgia. Michael's most recent book, Jacksonville and the Roots of Southern Rock, was published in 2019 and was the 2020 Florida Book Awards Bronze Medal winner for Florida nonfiction. Fellow Rotarians, please give a warm West Jacksonville welcome to Michael Ray Fitzgerald.
All right, how y'all doing? Good, good, good. I want to thank Patty for bringing me in. I want to thank Joe for helping me with get the presentation set up. So we're gonna go way back here to the early days when my family moved to Jacksonville in 1968. My father was in the Navy, so he wound up at NAS Jacksonville. So in 1968, coincidentally, the hippie movement came to Jacksonville on a wave of orange sunshine. Anybody have any idea what I'm talking about? Exactly. Lysergic acid, to be specific. So rock music was the soundtrack to the hippie movement. What was rock? What is rock music? Well, it's impossible to define. It could be anything from Hindu music to folk and acoustic music to dance, to vaudeville, to heavy metal. Rock was anything that the hippies listened to. Anybody remember any hippies? Any former hippies in here? No. So rock is impossible to define. So what is Southern rock? Well, Southern rock was music for the Southern hippies. That's what the Southern hippies listened to. And yeah, it was, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. That's what it was pretty much about. So, LSD was one of the real popular drugs, marijuana, and hippies would, partake, and then they would listen to music. So that was basically the foundations of rock culture, which landed here about 1968, which about the same time that Dickie Betts got here from Tampa. Dickie Betts and Barry Oakley, who were later in the Allman Brothers Band, had a band down in Tampa called the Blues Messengers. And there was a bar owner from Jacksonville who was down there. He saw the Blues Messengers. He said, I want you guys to come to Jacksonville and be the featured attraction at my new psychedelic club called The Scene up here on Roosevelt Boulevard, right where Publix is now, right along Publix. So he wanted to come up and be the house band at this psychedelic club with the dance floor with all these flashing lights built in. And he said, I want you to change your name of the group, though, to the Second Coming. And that's because Barry Oakley looked like Jesus with his long hair and his beard. So that was that was when the hippie movement came to Jacksonville, when the Second Coming got here. I guess I need to go ahead and give me a screen here. Hit F5 on that. There. So I'm going to talk about what Southern rock is. And you have to go back. Really, it was a specific kind of rock music. It was music that the Southern kids, the teenagers, the hippies liked. But there were, it was based on earlier forms. And go back to some of the forerunners of Southern rock. The first guy I would want to talk about would be Ray Charles, who is actually from Northern Florida. He's from Greenville, which is you know who he is, right? So yeah, well, he was born in Albany, that's right, and he grew up in Greenville, and his mother sent him to the Florida School for the Deaf and Blind in St. Augustine, where he attended from his about age 10, I think, till about 15. At 15, he quit school. He said, I'm going to go to Jacksonville and I'm going to be a professional musician. So he did. He moved here and he lived over on Church Street in a tenement house where La Villa School is now. And he scuffled around Jacksonville. He couldn't make any money. He had to get out of here. Actually, it's real interesting. He joined a country band called the Florida Playboys. Yeah, and it was a hillbilly group. That's what they called country music back then. It was hillbilly music. And he went out, and so, he became famous for doing country music many years later. About 1962, he had this album, Modern Sounds in Country and Western Music. He was well-versed in country music. And he went out with the Florida Playboys, went to Orlando, Tampa, and, he scuffled and starved. Your father, so more or less, took his place. And Marshall Rowland, you heard of Marshall Rowland, former the founder of WQIK Radio? He was a radio entrepreneur. He was a pedal steel player. He took Ray Charles's place in the Florida Playboys. So anyway, Ray Charles was sick of starving. He went to the bus station in Jacksonville. He said, give me a ticket to the furthest city from Jacksonville, which was Seattle. Give me a one-way ticket, and he was gone. So I went to Seattle and got signed by Jack Lauderdale of Swing Time Records, and he did very, very well. Next slide, please. Mae Axton is somebody else your father knows very well. She worked with Marshall a bit at WQIK. She was a promoter. Her family came here with the Navy. During World War II. Her husband was a fighter pilot, and she was teaching English, teaching school. She started writing for Country Music Roundup. And so she started going to Nashville and writing about country musicians. Then she started writing songs herself. And this is one that she co-wrote right here. You can play it now. So that's a straight 12-bar blues is what that is. And she co-wrote that with Tommy Durden, who was the pedal steel player on Toby Dowdy's Country Frolics. I don't guess anybody remembers that. But she and Tommy Durden wrote that song, and it was Elvis's first million seller. She knew Elvis because she had done some work for Colonel Tom Parker, who was Elvis's manager. So Johnny Tillotson met Mae Axton. She said in her book that he plopped down on her doorstep in Murray Hill one day and introduced himself with his big guitar. And he's from Jacksonville, but he grew up in Palatka. And he came to Jacksonville. He met Mae Axton. She got him a gig on the Toby Dowdy show. And then he got his own show on Channel 12. And then he performed on a talent show in Nashville and got a record deal out of that with Cadence Records. Do we have a soundtrack for that? So he was sort of a country pop. That's good enough. That's enough. He was sort of a country pop crooner, like in a vein of Eddie Arnold or Ray Price. He was kind of straddled the line between country and pop. And so he did quite well. He had a #2 hit record with Poetry in Motion. As I said, he is from Jacksonville. Next. Oh, that's a picture of him in later with Ray Charles, both former Jacksonville residents. Hoyt Axton, go ahead and play a bit of his hit song. I'm sure y'all heard this a million times. So he was Mae Axton's son. And that's him and his mother right there. And he went to Lee High School. A cool story about him was he burnt down Knauer's hardware on graduation's night in 1960. He went to Lee High School, and on graduation night he got, I think, got drunk and took a smudge pot. I don't guess anybody knows what a smudge pot is. He took a smudge pot and threw it through the plate glass window of Knauer Hardware and burned it to the ground. Got arrested for arson. Wrong crime. That's not arson. Arson you have to do for financial gain. So he got acquitted, and he left, went back to his family's home in Oklahoma and joined the Navy. So he got to be pretty famous. He got to be pretty famous. This was a group from Jacksonville with Butch Trucks on drums, who later joined the Allman Brothers Band, and David Brown on bass. Go back a bit. David Brown on bass, who was in Cowboy and Boz Scaggs' band, and on lead guitar was Scott Boyer, who was also in Cowboy. This was their trio. They formed this group in Florida State University when they were living in the dorms. They came to Jacksonville and made a whole lot of money. They were sort of a Byrds clone. Everything they did sounded like the Byrds. You could skip the audio on this one. Go to the next one. Meanwhile, in Daytona Beach, we have the Allman Brothers. That's Dwayne up there on the left playing guitar, and Greg up there on the right playing guitar. Now, I'm sure you've heard of Dwayne and Greg Allman, the Allman Brothers. The funny thing is, in those days, Greg Allman played lead guitar, and Dwayne Allman did all the singing. So later they switched those two roles. But these guys would come up to the two Allman Brothers would come up to Jacksonville a lot to sit in with the Second Coming at the scene. And, they would later become really big stars. Next. The Classics Four was Walter Eaton, was the founder of that group. That's him in the front, down front there. And to his right is Dennis Yost, who was the drummer for the Classics Four. They didn't even know he could sing. And he used to play, you can go to the next slide. He used to play and sing standing up. Right there, that's Dennis in the middle. Can you go back one and hit the audio here so people remember it? This was from 1968. Spooky, went to number 2. That's the same, that was a big hit when I moved here to Jacksonville. Okay, you can go a couple slides. J.R. Cobb was also in that band. He's from Jacksonville, and he graduated from Paxton High. And this is one of the drummers from the Classics, but he wasn't in the group. He was the early drummer. He wasn't in the group at the time. Robert Nix, they both graduated from Paxton in 1962, and they met again later on in Atlanta and put together the Atlanta Rhythm Section. You can play a sound bite if you like. Oh, there's not one there? Okay, next. Graham Parsons went from Winter Haven. Actually, he grew up in Waycross, and he's sort of considered one of the founders of country rock, which really is more or less the same thing as Southern rock. It's just that country rock was a West Coast thing, and Southern rock was an East Coast thing, but they're really the same idea. You mix hippie music, you mix in some R&B, you mix in some country, and it's pretty much the same thing. He graduated from Bowles School here in Jacksonville. He lived in Jacksonville for 4 or 5 years. And that's his high school yearbook picture from Bowles. What do we got next here? Yeah, there he is with his band, the Flying Burrito Brothers. And he died of a heroin overdose in California. And the people at Bowles don't really like to talk about him. He was a derelict drug addict, really. A great musician, but unfortunately a drug addict. A dead drug addict. Next. Okay, this is Dickie Betts when I first saw him here in Jacksonville. Love that floofy shirt. Don't you love that? And you can play a little bit of the sound right there. No, yeah, it's right there on that little speaker. Just click on that little speaker. That's Dickie singing I Feel Free by Cream. It's just terrible. Just really off-key singing, really bad. Do I have another slide here? That's okay. You can go forward one, please. There, that's Barry Oakley, also from the Second Coming. So these two guys were playing at the this scene when the Allman Brothers came up to sit in with them, and then later Dwayne Allman brought them into his new band, the Allman Brothers Band. So both of these guys wound up in the Allman Brothers Band. Okay, and this was another band that was not from Jacksonville. Dickie Betts was from Bradenton. So was Larry Reinhardt. That's him in the middle there. So that's Dwayne Allman on the left, Larry Reinhardt, and Barry Oakley there. And Larry Reinhardt was also from Bradenton, but he was living here in Jacksonville. And they were doing this band, The Load. Well, no, that's not the band, but his band, The Load, were doing gigs alongside the Second Coming. Okay, so this is where this brings us into actual Southern rock, because most people see the Allman Brothers as the formation of Southern, a gestation of Southern rock, but really it isn't. Southern rock wasn't really born here in Jacksonville. In the first place, musical styles aren't born, you know, they just evolve really kind of slowly, and you don't really notice any birth. And in the second place, really Southern rock was being experimented with in Los Angeles by Dwayne and Greg Allman themselves. When they were living in Los Angeles in 1967, they were signed to Liberty Records in a group called the Hourglass. So they were already doing Southern rock before they came back to Florida. So Jacksonville's not the birthplace of Southern rock, but it is the mother lode. Jacksonville had more Southern rock bands than any other city. So this is them in 67 and 68 in Los Angeles. That's Dwayne up there on the left, and Greg sitting on the piano with the microphone. He didn't play an instrument in this group. He was just the lead singer out front. And the other three guys were all from, well, let's see, Pete Carr was from Daytona, and the other two guys, Paul Hornsby and Johnny Sandlin, were from Alabama. Next. So this is the band Dwayne and Greg formed when the Hourglass fizzled and they came back to Jacksonville, because Jacksonville was a good place to get musicians. There were lots of musicians living here, and there were so many gigs. So Jacksonville was a good place to put a band together. So they came here exactly to do that. That band was put together right here in Jacksonville at the Forest Inn, at Willow Branch Park, and at a house over on Riverside Avenue that now has a historical plaque in front of it. Maybe I got a picture of that next. I hope. Can you go one more? There we go. Oh, no, this is a different group. I remember I mentioned David Brown and Scott Boyer. This is their group, Cowboy. This was also formed in Jacksonville. David Brown was sort of from Jacksonville. He went to high school here. And Scott Boyer, both of them did. Next. This is them, one back. This is them in 76. This is them in 70 when they formed the group. Dwayne Allman from the Allman Brothers Band helped these guys get their deal with Capricorn Records. Dwayne Allman just came by and said, one day on his bicycle, he was going from his mother's house in Daytona to Muscle Shoals where he was working. And he just stopped by in St. John's Park where these guys were rehearsing and said, "Hey, I heard you got a band. Let me hear something." So they played him something, and he went to Phil Walden at Capricorn Records and got him a deal. Next. You know who this group is? Don't recognize them? Yeah, Leonard Skinner. They got their name from Coach Skinner at Lee High School, because he used to give Gary Rawson a hard time about his hair. So as a joke, they named their group after him, made him famous. This is them in 1969 when they signed to a local record label called Shade Tree Records, owned by Tom Markham. Oh, wait, I have a sound clip. This is the original version of Freebird that was produced by Tom Markham here in Jacksonville in 1969 on Shade Tree Records, and it didn't do anything. They pressed up 200 copies, and that was it. Went nowhere in 69. Of course, they went a lot of places in the next few years. Next. This is the carport on Park Street right by a Radio Road, about a block from Radio Road, actually, where they first put the group together was Bob Burns, the drummer, Gary Rossington, and Larry Johnstrom, and they jammed here in that parking lot in 66, and they were called Me, You, and Him. I took this photo myself. So here they are later on when they got to be really big, 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 and you'll see Steve Gaines on the bottom right there, who was their new guitar player, who came in 76, and this is just before their plane crash. You want to play a little bit? That's from their very last studio album before the plane crash. Next. Another group from Jacksonville. Two of these guys had actually been in Skinner. Ricky Medlock there on the left was the drummer for Leonard Skinner at one point. He played guitar and sang lead in Blackfoot. And on the right, Greg Walker was also the bass player for Leonard Skinner, and they did some demos with Leonard Skinner at Muscle Shoals, and those albums didn't come out for 10 years. But these guys sort of followed in Skinner's footsteps. They had a Skinner connection, and that helped them land their deal. Next. 38 Special had a Skinner connection because the lead singer in the center there was Ronnie Van Zant's younger brother. So they had a real good connection. And they're famous for, actually, they had more hit singles than any band out of Jacksonville. They had 15 top 40 singles. 15, that's phenomenal. I don't think, yeah, we have a sound clip. Ring a bell? It's a huge hit. I don't think it went to #1, but it was top 5 nationally. Next. Molly Hatchet also sort of followed in Leonard Skinner's footsteps. Their manager, Pat Armstrong, had briefly been Leonard Skinner's manager. So it was getting kind of incestuous at this point, but what the heck, when you got the connections, why not use them, right? These guys had a couple of big hits. Actually, they had 4 gold albums and 1 platinum album, and they were formed right here in Jacksonville. Do we have a sound clip for these guys? Go back. I don't think so. No. Okay, next is another group with a Skinner connection. That's Johnny Van Zant, who was Ronnie's youngest brother there in the middle. Didn't you say something about Austin Nichols? Yeah, this band was called Austin Nichols, so I guess your brother was in this band. So Johnny's now the current lead singer for Leonard Skinner. He took his older brother Ronnie's place when after 10 years after Ronnie got killed in that airplane crash. Next. Another group from Jacksonville, Alias. They had a Skinner connection because JoJo in the front here was a background singer in Leonard Skinner, and Jimmy Doherty, the lead singer for Alias, was he was Ronnie Van Zant's favorite singer in Jacksonville. That guy was phenomenal. He's a great drummer and a great singer. That sounds an awful lot like Leonard Skinner, doesn't it? That's from their album. They did 1 album and fizzled. Rawson and Collins Band was formed by Gary Rossenden and Alan Collins. That's Rossenden in the white and Collins back over here on the right. And the rest of them are members of Skinner, except for Derek Hess and Barry Harwood. They came from a Christian rock group over on the South Side. You probably remember this. It was a top 10 hit in 1982 or 83. It was this is basically the remnants of Leonard Skinner with a female singer, Dale Krantz, who's now married to Gary Rossington, and she is the background singer in Leonard Skinner now. Next. Alan Collins Band, you can see there's Jimmy Doherty again, who was in Alias. There he is in the front. And this is all the same guys from the Rawson and Collins Band, except for Rossenden and Dale Krantz, who bolted and started their own group. They said they wanted to get away from all the drugs. Imagine that. This is me with Alan Collins in Vidalia at Uncle Buster's in Vidalia in 1984. He recruited me to be the lead singer for his new Alan Collins Band, which didn't get off the ground. And he was a mess. It was a nightmare. It didn't pan out. And there's me in 1989 with Leon Wilkeson. That's him on the left in the blue shirt, sitting in with my group on the Annabelle Lee. And he was a good friend of mine. And we actually dated the same woman when we were teenagers. Derek Trucks is probably one of the most well-known figures of Jacksonville, certainly one of the most talented, probably maybe the best slide guitar player in the world, although I think Sonny Landreth from Louisiana would give him a run for his money. But this is when I first saw him sitting. That's the Ace Moreland up there on the left, who had a band called the West Side Story because he lived here on the West Side. And this is Derek at 9 years old sitting in with Ace Moreland's group. And here he is today at age 40 something. But I saw him, he was a little toe-headed child with a guitar almost as big as he was. And he's very, very popular now. He's very famous. He's maybe the most talented music guitarist to ever come out of Jacksonville. This is JJ Gray, another group from the West Side. Sure, a lot of bands from the West Side. He doesn't consider himself Southern rock, but I do. I consider, because like I said, there's no definition for Southern rock. Southern rock is whatever you want it to be. It's just, you know, music for hippies with a Southern flavor, which could mean just about anything. So he's still around. He's got a group called JJ Gray and Mofro, and he's still touring, and he's doing it the hard way. He's going from city to city, selling albums from the merch table and winning fans one at a time. And he's built up a pretty solid cult following. And that's pretty much it, isn't it? Oh, the Van Zant. This is a duo, the Van Zant brothers. Johnny here, who's now the current singer for Leonard Skinner. And Donnie, who was the lead singer for 38 Special. And they did a duo called Van Zant. What else? And they got a deal in Nashville with Columbia Records in Nashville as a country act. And they had a top 20 country record in 2005. And I don't know what happened to that. It just went away and they don't talk about it. And here's Derek Trucks again with his wife, Susan Tedeschi. It's not Tedeschi, it's Tedeschi. And she's from Boston. And this is their new group, their 12-piece group. What kind of music do they do? Why is this Southern rock? I mean, well, for one thing, he's Southern rock royalty because he was in the Allman Brothers band for 15 years. He basically took Dwayne Allman's place in the Allman Brothers because he played slide as good, if not better, than Dwayne Allman. And now he's got his own band, and they're doing really well. And what makes it Southern rock? I don't know. I mean, it's mostly an R&B band, really, mostly doing rhythm and blues, and that's just one part of what's Southern rock. And that wraps it up. Thank you, folks. I hope you enjoyed it. And my book is available on Amazon.
Well, thank you, Michael. That was fascinating. It's great to know so many good bands have come out of Jacksonville. I just thought it was Leonard Skinner and Limp Bizkit.
There you go.
I'd like to open it up to questions. Please raise your hand and wait for me to come over there. And
Sure.
Are you still playing in a band now?
No, I can't remember the songs. I had a bad dream about that this morning. I dreamt that, that I lost my memory and I got up on stage and couldn't remember a single thing. Funny you should mention it. No, I'm not. Yes.
Questions over here?
No question, just a clarification. There's a difference between hippies and long hairs.
Okay, explain.
Long hairs accomplish something.
Actually, you couldn't really say Ronnie Van Zant was a hippie because hippies were into peace and love, and he definitely was not that. He terrorized those guys in that band. He beat the crap out of them.
Yes, William Milne has a question.
Thank you so much. As a music enthusiast like myself, with Molly Hatchet and 38 Special still out there touring, I know 38 Special just announced a show in Jacksonville. What are the surviving members of Leonard Skinner up to now? Any of them working on side projects?
The surviving members of Leonard Skinner. The only one is Gary Rossington. And no, he's not even playing with Skinner at the moment. He had some heart procedures and he's taken a hiatus. So there are currently at this juncture no original members touring in Skinner. There are no original members in Molly Hatchet. There's one original member in 38 Special, Don Barnes. Yeah. Who's a great singer. Yes. Dickie wrote that actually. Dickie Betts wrote In Memory of Elizabeth Reed. Yeah. Yeah. The thing they have in common is Dickie and Derek were in the band for 15 years together. They both were heavily into blues, and Dickie started off playing blues, but Dickie had played bluegrass when he was a child. He played mandolin when he was a child. So he sort of brought that bluegrass and country feel into the Allman Brothers band when he did Ramblin' Man. Now, Derek, I don't think has a lick of country in him. So he's just doing blues and bluegrass. So that would be the difference between them. But what they have in common is they are both blues players. Sure. Anything else?
Well, I know we probably have a lot of questions. We have time for one more. Tim Johnson had a question.
Hey.
Do any of the venues that you mentioned still exist in Jacksonville? And do you find that great venues create great musicians?
Oh, absolutely. The thing is that Jacksonville had so many gigs that musicians had a chance to get out there and develop their craft, you know, and woodshed in front of audiences. Are there any of those left? I don't think so. They're all gone. We had some really big clubs where all these bands played, and they played a lot of small clubs, and then there were teen clubs, and there were bottle clubs. Anybody know what a bottle club is? Oh, it was so amazing. They were after hours clubs. They would be teen clubs from 8 p.m. till midnight. And then at midnight, they'd clear all the kids out. The Forest Inn was one of these. They'd clear all the kids out. And then they'd let the adults in, and you could bring your own quart of liquor into the club with you. You buy it at a liquor store, go bring it in the club, and you would buy setups, which was just, you know, a styrofoam cup with some Coke in it or 7-Up, and you mix your own drinks at the table. And so there were so many gigs and so many places to play. And that's what made Jacksonville, you know, a music town. Was there were just hundreds of, you could throw a rock. I mean, you didn't even have to have a band. You could go out and book a gig and then put a band together. There was so much demand for live music. And part of the reason there was so much demand for live music was the Big Ape, WAPEAM, because they would play records by local bands from time to time. And so that whetted everybody's appetite for bands. Before that, you would go to a sock hop and dance to records. But then when Big Ape came along, it changed all that, and people in Jacksonville demanded live music. You couldn't, I mean, every place had live music. The Holiday Inns had live music. The Steak and Ale had live music. Jacksonville was a live music town. That's what made this happen.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And here's a little small token of appreciation. Thank you so much. We really appreciate you being here and speaking to us. Fascinating topic. Thank you. Thank you. You know, who knew we were part of history, you know, when we were growing up here and listening to the music here. So thank you for sharing that with us. Thank you also to everybody that contributed to the meeting today. And I won't take the time to name them all, but you know who you are. Thank you so much for contributing to the meeting today. Another warm welcome to Jennifer, our new member, Jennifer Mack. If you have not met her, please make sure you do. Jennifer, welcome. And thank you to our visiting Rotarian and our guest. Please know that you're welcome here anytime. We hope to see you again soon. A couple of quick reminders. Our program next week will be our district governor, Jeff Michaelman. And just as you honored Ike and I by being here for President's Night, I hope you'll honor our district governor by being here next week for his visit. Vibrant Club Seminar is this Saturday in Palatka. And we'll have a board meeting in just 5 minutes. And did I miss anything, anybody? Okay, so I think Carter's going to lead us in our 4-way test. Carter?
Please join me in the 4-way test of the things we think, say, or do. First, second, third, and fourth.
Thank you. And your quote for the week: believe you can and you're halfway there. Theodore Roosevelt. Y'all have a great week.
What do you need?